Yo, yo, yo. Welcome in. Part 2 tonight of the Major Report. Tonight, a little bit more focused on the DFS and the fantasy side versus part 1. Back again for another night. Andy Lack, how you doing, sir? I know you've had a busy day. Great to have you back here.
I'm great. I'm just settling in. I came straight from a podcast. I'm super excited. We already got our guys backstage that I can't wait to talk to. I like DraftKings more than I like betting. I just I don't know how that happened for me, but it kind of turned for me over the past couple of months. So I am super eager to talk to some really smart DFS guys tonight.
Super sharp minds. It is definitely some different storylines to talk about. While you're in here, thank you for joining us. If you would like, we would greatly appreciate if you hop over to the Preferred Lines YouTube page. Just give it a thumbs up. If you prefer to watch it on Twitter, hop back here. But that all helps trying to get in on a little bit of YouTube algorithms as we go. Share the show with a friend. Anything helps us out. Andy and I did about an hour and 45 minutes last night in part A. You can check out the videos pinned to my Twitter page now at Tour Picks on both of our podcast feeds, which we've done has been doing really well. Also, I think it translates the style that we're doing, Andy. I think translates really well in the audio format. How's it been doing over there on the InSky Golf Pod feed?
Yeah. People seem to really like it. I appreciate you sending the audio file too. So a bunch of people that I have a bunch of listeners that I don't think are on Twitter, so they didn't get to catch it live last night on Twitter or on YouTube. But yeah, man, I think it works really well, and I hope it's something we can continue to do. It's not easy, right? From the technical side of it. So I want to give you a lot of props for being such a good producer and as a host too, kind of navigating all these different people coming in and out at the same time, doing different topics. And some of what we did was pre-recorded and stuff like that. So I commend you a lot. It's been a blast, man. It's been an absolute blast. So thanks for including me in it.
I appreciate that. We've got 2 more player spotlights coming later in the show. I got a really cool interview with Steve Scott, who probably has the most famous U.S. amateur story of all time. Lets me in on what it's like to play Augusta as an amateur. So that's really cool. But we're going to kick it off right now with our first live segment. Brought in the DFS guys. I'm going to bring them into the stream right now. Toe tagging Tambo. Tambo, how you doing? Kenny Kim at Kendo VT. And of course, my good friend Ryan Baroff, R Baroff 427. 3 of the sharpest minds in daily fantasy sports that I know when talking golf. How you doing, fellas? Thank you for joining us.
Doing good, man. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, man, good, man. I don't know about me being the sharpest. The other 2 might be there, but I'm here.
Yeah, Joe, Andy, thanks for appreciate you guys putting this together. I watched last night. It was super entertaining, and looking forward to what you guys have on tap tonight.
Thanks, dude. Listen, let's just get right into it. I'm going to ask the first question. So I know we got 5 of us here, so we'll kind of go around the board. So we'll start with Tambo, the way that they're at least layered on my screen. We'll start with Tambo, then go to Ryan, then go to Kenny, and then Andy will follow up with a question. But here's how I'll start. I could ask you who you like in the 10K range. I want to know the one player you don't like in the 10K range. Who are you totally fading? Who have you have 0% of Tambo this week?
Yeah, Victor Hovland. That one's easy for me. I think especially with looking at these wind forecasts picking up. I know the guy's overall game and skill set is there, but he was already a guy that was off my radar. I know he'll still be lower owned. Doesn't bother me. I think that's where people make mistakes sometimes and looking at it like, oh, but he's only 2%. I just need to get 7. I think you're wasting 7% that you could be putting more to Rahm or JT or the guys that you actually like in that range. And his around the green game, we know it's no secret, is not the best, and that just doesn't help his case in my opinion as well. So easy to get off Victor Hovland here.
Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I kind of started that same direction, but in the interest of being different, I will say Colin Morikawa. And I think it's a pretty easy argument for him. I mean, he's obviously not the longest. And what does Colin do best, right? He went with his iron play, and the iron play just hasn't been there. I mean, really the last couple of months since he won over on the European Tour, the irons just aren't there. So if he's not scraping everything inside 10 feet, he's obviously not going to lead this field in putting. I think Morikawa is an easy fade this week.
Kenny?
I'm with Tambo. No Hovland for me, and then it worries me a little bit because I expect his ownership to be extremely low. It always makes it tempting when you have a 10K guy that's going to be single digit owned, maybe 5-6% owned. Hovland could be that guy. But I'm sticking with Tambo. No Hovland for me. The short game's just not going to be good enough in a situation where there's going to be so much wind, missed greens, getting it up and down those tricky areas. I know he's played here twice. I think he needs a few more times through the course to get it done, especially with how poor his short game is.
So you guys are all great you all do a great job about talking about ownership a lot. So I kind of want to ask you, are there any guys in this top range? Do you think that we're going to get a lot of late movement in any direction with somebody at the top? Maybe somebody that's coming in kind of lower in the projections now that you could see catching a little bit of steam maybe tonight on Wednesday. There's been some talk about which side of the draw has a better side, all that stuff. Is there anyone that you guys see, Tambo, I guess you can start off again, that you see either like catching a lot of steam or losing some steam at the last minute?
I definitely think catching some steam, and I think you nailed it there, Andy. I love your stuff, by the way. I appreciate that. And just the way you brought it up with the wave draw, we've got potential. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but what I'm seeing and hearing people at least talking about is there's wind in both of the afternoons, but it looks like Friday afternoon, unfortunate for Tiger, but it looks like that could have higher gusts. And where Rory goes off, we're getting softer conditions. He's getting overshadowed by the Tiger hype on the Grand Slam, all these things. I think just in my own mind, I think it translates that Rory could pick up some steam down the stretch, being at 10K. And if people are moving off, the next part of it would be Cam Smith. I'm not sure if you guys heard this, but one of the biggest tidbits right now that I'll have it tomorrow in the thread is Cam Smith is in the group. I think he's in the group right ahead, or maybe the one in front of that, of Tiger Woods. The point there being, and I think he's directly in front of all of those thousands of fans that are going to be after Tiger hits the approach. We'll skip the putt, but we want to get to the next hole, and there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in front of him. I wonder if that will get to the groups ahead of Tiger. So I think Rory could pick up some steam for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think one guy who I really liked up here to start the week, who I thought was going to be pretty low owned, was Dustin Johnson. I haven't looked at the tee sheet and don't know much about the wind yet, but it feels like DJ's going to pick up some steam. Even though he's priced up a little higher than we've seen him in majors kind of over the last year. It just feels like there's a lot of hype about him. He's obviously won here. The game seems to be coming around. We've seen a couple really good events in a row. And so if people are looking to pivot off of Justin Thomas, who will likely be the highest owned up here, I think you could see DJ push, 18%, 20%.
Yeah, well, that doesn't make me feel that great because DJ is one of my favorite plays out there, and I wanted him to be low owned. I think the person that might pick up C was Morikawa. I know what you said about him. I think the thing about Kawa, the interview that he put out either on Golf Week, I really like the way, and I'm going to be using him also, so probably going to be chalk because I am Mr. Chalk Man. He wasn't on my list on Sunday for our Fantasy Golf Generates pod, but as the week goes on, I mean, the one thing I really liked about in his interview was he said the first 2 times he came out to Augusta, he tried to play the course in a different way, not his own game. He's like, I have to learn how to hit a high draw. I have to learn how to hit these type of shots for this course. And I think that messed him up a little bit. I mean, he still finished 18th last year. He said this year's coming in, he's going to play his game the way he knows how to play it, and I think that will help him. We've seen what he's done in majors. I think he can gather some steam. I think DJ is a good choice too as well. I think any of these guys, it's hard, really hard trying to figure out what the ownership is going to be in this range, except maybe Scheffler is going to be extremely low owned and Hovland's going to be extremely low owned, and Scheffler's tempting as well when it comes to that.
Yeah, we obviously get an influx this week of maybe more casual fantasy players, and we also get an influx of new and bigger contests. I kind of want to break this part down into 3 parts and have you each maybe tackle a different part. Tambo, I want to start with you. The Millimaker, right? 300,000 plus entries in it. I'm sure you're going to throw 150 lineups in it. As someone who's building and putting a ton of lineups into the Millionaire Maker, how does your strategy potentially differ there versus another contest or maybe another week?
Yeah, definitely. Just a common saying that I have now. I utilize the acronym from Daily Fantasy Sports, DFS, and just say when it comes to those tournaments, don't fear shit. And what I mean by that is get off the chalk. Just stop worrying about, if I don't get a sprinkle of this guy or a sprinkle of that guy, like I'll miss out if it's him. It could be his week. I think it's his time. All this stuff. You just can't worry about that. You just have to not care. Know the outcomes. You're going to lose a lot more times than you're going to win. There's 315,000 people plus in that $15 Millimaker. You're playing it to win. It's $1 million to first. Usually, I think it's 100,000 a second. It might have been a little bit better this time around. I barely look. I just do, like I said, build them up, throw them in with the chance to win. So when you get down to the guys like Corey Connors with all the ownership, all that, I think he's a good play. I'm just saying when it comes to that tournament, I've got no problem completely going against the grain. And then also just looking at what the rest of the field's going to do when you're in the larger field. So like the $100 Millimaker has less people in it, 28,000 or something. You can play that a little bit differently. Like the mega with 1,000 people, you can definitely play that differently because in the large field, I'm also looking at what's the common roster construction. So for example, if I think nobody is going to do two studs up top, I might be going more ROM JTs together than most people are picking between one and then balancing out somewhere else. And I'll just take on the risk of more 6K guys and have unique construction, not worrying about, again, not fearing that 9K range that is good, but I will skip it in some lineups to make sure that I'm different in that tournament.
Yeah, Ryan, how about you? I want to talk to you about like single entry contests. I know you had the famous victory where you won the Masters single entry. I believe the $200. What was that? The November edition of the Masters. How does it change if you're a guy that builds a lot of lineups? How are you picking the one that you throw into these single entries?
So, I mean, good question. I think one, play the guys who you like the most, right? And I think you see chalk be successful at Augusta more than other places. I think for a couple of reasons. Number one, you have the course history and the course form, and same guys, they just tend to play well here, and that's why they're popular. But also with the small field and about 20 guys, the old guys, the amateurs down at the bottom who really aren't viable, almost everyone's making the cut, right? Like there may be 3 or 4 or 5 guys who are viable DFS plays that make the cut. And so your average ownership is going to go up. I would set specific rules about I want a couple guys under 10% on my team, like that sort of thing. But ultimately, play the best. You got to play the best plays, and the mega chalk. Just make sure you avoid that. For an example, this week, right? I would imagine Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Paul Casey, that trio, very high owned across the board. I'm not going to put multiple of those guys on any sort of Millimaker or any big. Like the 5-5-5 team or something like that.
Kenny, how about you? Let's talk cash games, double ups, 50-50s. How does strategy differ in something like that versus something like the Millimaker?
Well, usually, I mean, in my opinion, normally when you look at these Masters pricing in previous years, it's extremely soft, and you have that sort of auto pick play down in the 6K range that you're just going to plug in for cash. I think it was Connors last year, Kisner a couple of years ago, 6,600, 6,800. There isn't that person there this year, in my opinion. I'm not a big fan of the 6K when it comes to cash. So you normally, when it comes to the Masters, I would play maybe a couple of guys in the 10K range, 7K for the rest, and one low 6K guy, maybe even throw an 8K guy in there, low price 8K guy in there. But now this year with the pricing, it seems like DraftKings made it just a little bit tighter. And so because of that, I think I have to go balanced. So, with my cash game cornerstones, I'm doing, Spieth, Koepka, Adam Scott, and Corey Connors. And I see your point about Connors going to be super crazy owned. So, I'll have him in cash where ownership is not really that important. And I'll be light on him in the GPPs, which is usually my strategy when it comes to it. Now, I might break that strategy a little bit this year, especially with Koepka. I think I want to have a little bit more than I normally have anyone in my cash game cornerstone with Koepka. But I think more of a balanced lineup because, normally the 6 of 6 rate in the Masters is a bit higher just because, you only got about 20 guys that are rosterable that are going to miss the cut. So, you sort of have to get that 6 of 6. And, it was still pretty easy to get that 6 of 6, even with a 6K guy in the previous years. This year, I just don't see that guy. So a lot more balanced. The lowest price guy I have right now is 7,100, but that I'm leaving 500 on the under the cap. So, I could go all the way to 76 if I feel like it. But I mean, I'm not trusting Casey this week.
So you guys knew we were going to go here, and I've already talked to Baroff a little bit about this in DMs, but I want to talk about Tiger specifically as a DFS play. I am seeing the projections that I've seen so far are lower than I thought they would be. And I know this, I guess, I think it's probably going to differ based contest to contest, but I guess we'll probably talk about like the $15 Millimaker because that's probably going to be, it is clearly right now the most popular contest. So I want to get all your guys' takes. We'll start with you, Tambo. Where do you think Tiger actually lands when it's all said and done? And is he a play for you this week?
Yeah, it's something I thought about a lot. Baroff and I have also talked about it some, and I feel like I want to play a little bit of them, but at the same time, I'm basically just going to do this. I'm going to play them in some hand builds in something like the $100 Millimaker, where I'm going to make my best Tiger teams with my guys that I like, sort of my core plays, so that if my core hits and Tiger does show up and do something crazy, I'm there. But beyond that, and I'll say this, in the $15, I think because there is more casuals who will play it, you know, my dad throws his lineup one week in there. I'm sure people will click him. So I could easily see him get 10 to 12% by the time it's all said and done. Maybe if we talk about Steam, that's a possibility. Obviously, all the quotes, all the player conversations, the shots that we've seen or people have seen that are out there at the course, they say he looks great. The question is whether or not he can do the walk. The interesting part to me, Andy, is more about like the odds and stuff. Like, why is it plus money for him to make the cut? Seems like a slam dunk. Why is it like a 74.5 round one number? Like, where is all that coming from?
Patrick Reed's minus 175 against him.
Yeah. So that throws me off a little bit more. But for me, if, you know, it's like everybody else is saying this, I believe it to be true. If, you know, if Tiger shows up on Sunday, I'll be here at my house watching the Masters with my dad, looking forward to it, then great. It's going to make for an even better Sunday. I just don't worry too much about it. And I think there's just way too many other guys above and below that I feel better about, that I want to push my ownership there more so and get action that way.
Yeah, I'm a little higher on him, I think. As I told you, Andy, I expect him to be capped around 8% probably in most of the stuff. You know, any of the kind of higher buy-in stuff, I think he'll be much lower than that, maybe 4%, 3%, something like that. So there's certainly leverage there. I think he's going to be fine. If he fits your build, the only 8K guy that I'm actually, or I was excited to play was Neiman. And seems like he's going to be over-owned as well. So, like, you're comparing a guy like Tiger to Im, who hasn't been in great form, Adam Scott, who's probably going to be over-owned and hasn't been great, Burns, who's a first-timer. Like, I think Tiger can beat all those guys. Lowry, I'll take Tiger over Lowry here. So, yeah, I will certainly be playing Tiger this week.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that, guys. I thought I had my thing on mute, but I didn't. I apologize. Like I said, I am at work. So I occasionally I might have to run out and do a little bit of work while I'm doing the show. I'm trying here. But you know, I think that Tiger, I don't know, man. He might. I haven't seen any ownership projections. I usually wait till Wednesday. You know, so I'm taking guesses here. I think he might be a little bit higher owned than people think. I mean, people love Tiger. What he's talking about, it seems like he can go out there and do his thing. I'm not going to go against him. I'll probably roster him if he's, you know, high single digits, low double digits. I mean, yeah, I'm in. I'll roster him, you know, because it's Tiger and you can't really never count him out. You know, I made that mistake in 2019 and, you know, and when he won and I was on all these different shows, like Tiger's not going to win. Tiger's not going to win. No way. And then he fucking won. And so I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. So, I mean, I have no problem playing Tiger this week. Now, if his ownership, if we look and it's crazy or whatever websites you go on for your ownership, Gups Corner, Run Pure, whatever one you go on, Fantasy National, you know, you could, if it seems like he's going to be like 15 to 18%, then maybe it's worth a fade. But I don't think it's going to get that high, but I think he's going to garner some ownership.
If you guys are building, when you build your stat model this week, what are you putting the highest weight on? The biggest emphasis in that model is on what stat. We'll start with you, Tambo.
Yeah, approach, just because that's what the course is. But add a lot around the green, especially. You know, I think that's just something that goes overlooked every single year. So I put more emphasis on that than if we're talking the most common stat that everyone's putting emphasis on. I think in approach.
Ryan.
Yeah, pretty similar. I may kind of break it down into buckets a bit, not like the distance buckets because I don't really do that. long-term approach and short-term strokes gained around the green.
Kenny, how about you?
Strokes gained tee to green probably with approach in there, and also factoring in a bunch of around the green as well. But I mean, those are like the classic ones that you go with. I don't think you go against that.
I want to get a little bit farther down the board and talk about some of the lower priced options. Do you guys have a guy, I guess we'll say anyone below 7.5 that really has your attention this week that maybe not a lot of people are talking about too much?
I'll go before Baroff probably steals my thunder, because I think it might be his guy at some point. I'm a Thomas Peters guy. He's talked to me about him a bunch, and I just think the upside is there. That's one of the things that when we talked a little bit earlier, just to relate back to it, try and tie it down, is like there's a lot of guys down here that people, Kisner's, Harmon's, of course, one of them could show up. Harmon got T12 last year, but my point is it's not just more about the bomber angle. I think that is interesting, Andy. I know you talked about that this week well before anybody else did on your podcast. I loved it. I just think it's not just about that. It's about, is there potential upside? Yes, he could go completely backwards, even miss the cut. Who knows? I know more people make the cut. But if he does make it through and has kind of a good week, puts 3 rounds together that Sunday, I don't really fear it that much. And I think he could easily get me a top 20 and something that ends up on a winning roster, a winning GPP lineup on my roster, versus the guy that I'm just like, oh, at least he's T36. Let's see what he does on Sunday and hope for the best. And he could actually end up going backwards too. So, I look for the upside when I'm going down there. And there's a few other guys like that, but Peters stands out for me.
Yeah. I'm going to ignore that and talk to you about Thomas Peters for a second. Yeah, that's my guy. I'll certainly be using him. The other one, and again, just because the first timer narrative, it tends to keep ownership down. I don't really see a reason to stop playing Cameron Young. I prefer him to Luke List and all those guys there. He bombs it, but he's also pretty good with his wedges. He's pretty good with the putter, and he scores on par 5s. I'm really looking at kind of that very, very recent form. And of course, over the last 8 weeks or so, he's been one of the best in the world. So I think you'll get him probably 4%, 3% owned.
Yeah, I mean, you stole my thunder on that one. I like Cameron Young a lot at 7K, especially for GPPs. I mean, when you get down to this price, I mean, you can sort of ignore the debutante thing. If he gets a top 10, top 20, it should still be fine. I mean, other guys that I will be looking at in this range, probably Mark Leishman, Siwoo Kim. They are both in my cash lineup as of now. When you look at Siwoo Kim, it's sort of funny. He used to be one of the most erratic golfers on tour. Now he's making every cut, and he's played pretty well here at Augusta. I think he makes pretty good cash option. He played well last week. If you're looking in the 6K range, I'm going again with my Korean brethren. I know he doesn't have the length, and I know it'll be a little bit tougher for him but if you look at Kevin Na and how good he is around the greens, I think that could play into effect big time this week. I mean, the thing is, it's not like, I don't think he's going to win, but he has 4 top 15s in his career, or in the last, 8 times he's played this course. So it's not like this course is impossible for him, and especially with his prowess around the greens, I like him in that 6K range.
Guys, thank you. I feel like we could sit here for an hour and just keep talking. We're on a little bit of a tight schedule. I greatly appreciate your guys' time. 3 of the legit OGs in the fantasy golf world in terms of putting out content, both on Twitter, podcast format, video, all that stuff. So I appreciate you guys all breaking off a couple of minutes for us here. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys having us. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, man. Thanks
guys.
a lot.
That was a blast.
Later,
Thanks, guys. See ya. All right, good stuff. Listen, I don't want to bury the lead here too much, but there's a lot of people, and 2 of our 3 guys there said it. I listened to a little bit of the sports gambling podcast with you yesterday. A lot of people are immediately fading Vic Hovland up at the top in the 10K range. Almost everyone. I'm going to save it basically the last 20 minutes of the show. You and I are finally going to get to talk and kind of go back and forth on some takes. So I'm going to save it for them, but stick around for that. But before we move on to the next segment, Brooks. God, I'm so excited to talk about Brooks. We have our next edition of the Player Spotlight. My good friend, your good friend, we've both known him for quite a while. Luke Walker at Luke Sweat It Out on Twitter is here to do a Player Spotlight on Brooks Koepka. Here he is. All right, welcome into another Player Spotlight segment. This time with my good friend Luke Walker. Also, I must say, a fellow huge Brooks stan. I had to bring in the one guy that I think is as big as fan of him as I am to make this point for me. Luke, what's up, dude?
Not too much, Joe. Happy to be here talking about our favorite guy, the big game hunter, Mr. Brooks Koepka himself.
So we got a big game, right? The biggest game. What do you see like incoming? What are some stats that sort of trends? How's his health look to you? Where's the state of his game right now?
Yeah, so I think that the state of his game right now is almost peaked would be the best way to describe it. And I think that a lot of people are going to be looking at him for that exact reason, because they're seeing some incoming form that is looking pretty nice. It's trending the right way. We go back to Phoenix, I think is really where this run started.
Yep.
He had the T3 in Phoenix. He missed the playoff by 1. What I really liked was his strokes gained off the tee numbers, 5 strokes off the tee, 2.2 approach, 5.9 tee to green. Genesis, you and I talked about this, not really a course that he likes.
Right.
Had a miscut there, no big deal. He goes to Honda, has a nice little T16. Again, 5.6 tee to green. He gets the wrong side of the draw at the Players, gets basically blown off the course for his second round. It derails what was a really good starting.
It was.
Round. He was 3 under with a chance to get up and down on a par 5 to get to 4 under, and then just ended up in the water a bunch, and everybody in his wave basically had the same fate as him. So I'm willing to completely throw that out. Then we go to the Valspar, another 5.3 tee to green. So in 3 of his last 5 events, he's basically averaging 5.5 strokes tee to green. Valspar, he had the round of the day in round 4, and just looked like he was ready to come for heads at the match play, which for the most part he did. He swept his matches in his pod, 3-0. He goes up against big bad number 1 in the world, Jon Rahm, takes him down. Some people may tell you that he didn't look very good in that round against Rahm, but you know what? He won against the world number 1.
Yep.
And it was mostly just the inability to make some putts. Tee to green was really good. And then you see the exact same thing against DJ. He tee to green looks great, especially the approach play is just on fire. Couldn't make a putt, ends up taking the loss to DJ, which in my mind, not that bad of a thing.
Yeah.
I think that taking Sunday off, not having to play 2 more or 1 more round is nothing wrong with that. He got his rounds in. He looked fantastic. And so those are what the stats will tell you that he looks like. You and I both are guys who watch him all the time, right? Because we bet him all the time. So we're tracking him all the time. We're watching him on the featured coverage. And with Brooks, you really can see when he's there and when he's not. I always like to watch his balance and his follow through. If he's leaning one way or the other, it's not his week. He's having some struggles. When he is perfectly balanced and you can see that the tempo is right, the balance is right, the results are always right. I mean, he is hitting the ball just missiles down the fairway, whether it's with driver, the 3-wood, it doesn't matter. And so that's kind of what we've seen over the last basically 2 months is a lot of really good balance, a lot of rolling putts really nicely. It's always the line that he wants, whether it's going in or not is a different thing. There's a lot of variation and randomness in putting, but if he's getting the ball rolling on the line that he wants, you can't really ask for much more other than hopefully get lucky and have a lot of them start dropping.
Yeah, you're spot on with the balance. I look at that a lot too. He was perfectly balanced and hit like one of the 3rd, I think, longest drive ever recorded on the PGA Tour. So the power is there. He looks healthy. He looks in great shape. But let's talk about his chances at the Masters. Books right now, we're a couple days out, floating around that 18-1 mark, let's call it. What do you think of his chances? How does he win? What is his path to victory at Augusta?
Yeah, so the odds are so funny with Brooks because we've been getting between 30 and 40 for basically every tournament that he's played in. But in the futures markets for the Masters, he's never moved out of the teens. It's always been there in 16, 18, whatever it may be. There was some boosts available on certain sites into the 22, 25 range, but not every book is doing that. And the books are just, they understand who this guy is, and they're afraid to float any numbers on him for a major. And I think that when you're talking about majors in 2022, excuse me, the conversation absolutely has to start with Brooks. It's what he does. So looking at his Masters record specifically, his first Masters was in 2015, 33rd, in 2016, 21st, 2017, 11th. He didn't play in 2018, 2019, T2 one stroke behind behind Tiger. In the fall Masters of 2020, he was T7th, and then he missed the cut in 2021. So that's his only ever missed cut at the Masters.
With a horrible, like he could barely stand up. He couldn't even bend down.
He hadn't played 6 weeks coming in, and he didn't play the 5 weeks coming out. It was his only tournament for basically a 3-month span.
Right.
He was clearly injured, and he just battled because he loves this tournament. So I think that that's really encouraging for Brooks. I think that the Masters is certainly a tournament where you don't just show up and win. We've seen guys show up and play well. Zalatoris just last year, in his debut he was contending. Usually, though, the way that it goes is you get a couple of reps, you play it, you are a little bit better every time. And so I think his form trending in with, 33rd, 21st, 11th, and then 2 top 10s, he's knocking on the door. He's right there. He's got a ton of experience now. He understands what it takes at this course. And as far as his path to victory, I think it's pretty clear. We talked about it, the balance off the tee and really just starting to hit some bombs. Augusta is a place where you really can bomb away off the tee. It's wide open off the tee. And like most golf courses, it truly is a second shot golf course. And due to its length, a lot of those second shots are long irons. And I think that Brooks Koepka is maybe as good as anyone on the planet with a long iron in his hand. We've seen a lot of these tournaments recently where it's driver wedge or a lot of short irons. And honestly, I don't think that that's what favors Brooks's game. I think that he's better on a long golf course that, takes a lot of guys out of the question as far as who can actually contend. And if you put a long iron in his hand over and over and over, I think that he's going to be better than anybody. And then on the greens, he's shown us that he can be an elite putter, an elite lag putter, and make the clutch ones when he needs to. So I think that's the path to victory is stay healthy, hit the long irons, take advantage of the par fives. And, he's not a guy who's going to wither. He's mentally stronger than most of these guys. He knows how to win majors. He knows how to contend against the top dogs. And I think it's all right there for the taking.
Absolutely love it, man. The majors are what he plays for. He's healthy. He looks great. And I think it's time for the king to sort of retake his throne. Luke Walker at Luke Sweated Out on Twitter. Thank you for providing some assurance for me on Brooks Koepka this week, and appreciate you stopping by for the Player Spotlight, brother.
Anytime, buddy. You know that anytime you call, I'm going to answer. So thanks for having me, and go Brooks.
Hey, back up the Brooks truck, right?
Boom, Brooks truck. Let's go.
All right. The case made there from Luke. Appreciate it. We'll talk more about that later as well. We're going to keep it right moving. Listen, you want to win $1 million with like 300,000 people in the contest. You're going to have to pay attention to ownership, make some pivots based on leverage. We've got 3 guests in here to kind of go over this next segment. I'm going to introduce them one by one. First, my good pal, my old friend on Preferred Lines. Welcome to the stream. Hailing from Minnesota, Chad Eckert. What's going on?
Oh, boys, how you doing? Hey, I love the fact that you included me on this prestigious panel of experts here.
Of course, man. Next up, coming to you straight from, I think it's like Lexington, Kentucky area, but an awesome dude. I've been on his show a while, which is incredible. Welcome to the show, Rob, DFS RC Guilt. Did I get that Twitter handle right, buddy? What's going on?
Yeah, you couldn't have got it more right. So I, follow what Chad said. Appreciate being here. Excited to talk Masters. Very much excited.
And last but certainly not least, the most electric man on golf Twitter, who's absolutely taken the universe and golf Twitter by storm over the last 6 months. Welcome to the show, the one and only Big Kirsch Dog. What's up, Brian?
My heart is so full seeing Chad and Joe right side by side together. Like, I feel like I like an ex-couple just kind of reunited in a park or something, and I can feel that the love is in the air between you two, and I'm glad to be joined by some great guests tonight.
Good vibes everywhere. Andy, I'm going to let you kick it off with the first question here. What do you got for our boys?
All right, so let's obviously start with the top, right? I want to go around the horn here, and this was kind of a question that we talked a little bit about with our previous guest, but I'm so curious to get your guys' take on where ownership stands now. If there's any big surprises to you so far out of the 10K range, anything that you see that you don't think is right or that you think is going to move in the next 24 hours? I guess let's start with Chad.
Okay, well, you have Scheffler at the tippity-tip top, number 1 in the world, and he may not be owned, so that's kind of interesting. But what's really alarming to me is that Colin Morikawa at $10,200, that may end up being the pivot that'll win you a GPP. So it's Colin Morikawa to me that's being overlooked. It feels like the Open Championship last summer where nobody wanted him. Are we having that same vibe or no?
We might be.
What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I agree with Colin. I think he's going to, speaking of Joe, what you mentioned that, and the Millimaker, the $15, 300,000 plus entry. So if you're going to finish in the top 1%, you're going to have to play a guy like Colin, or I'm a big fan on Victor Hovland, who is at a similar ownership number, I think just 1 percentage point higher than Chad, your boy Colin. Big fan of Victor. A lot of people, course narrative obviously is important. His course history here is kind of sneaky. Was low am the year that Tiger won, finished 32nd, finished 21st last year. But shout out to my boy D Flowers. He started out round 1 on Thursday with a triple bogey. So I know a big if, but if you take away that triple bogey, he finishes top 10. I think Victor Hovland, like Colin Morikawa, a sneaky play at single-digit ownership number. BK, you look like you're chomping at the bit to add in on that. What do you think?
No, absolutely. I think Victor Hovland's a fine play this week. My guy at the top of the board that we're talking about a little bit of leverage and talking about a little bit of ownership discount is going to be Scottie Scheffler for me. I think that a lot of people are not going to want to pay that price for him, but I agree with this narrative, and I think that it's true that I think that Bones being on the bag is a big advantage for JT, but I also think that he has Bubba Watson's caddy on the bag, and Scottie Scheffler has obviously been wonderful in the majors, and he's been all right at Augusta. He has a 19th and an 18th place finish, so I just think the fact that people aren't going to want to go there because they're not used to paying that price for him makes him a little bit of a nice pivot play at the top of the board.
Yeah, guys, kind of what I've found, and I'm no expert certainly on DFS, but a lot of times it gets spread out a good bit at the top, and you can kind of go anywhere. Where you can really make the difference is finding a really like sub 5% guy in the low 7K ranges or even the 6K range that if he peaks can win you a lot of money. Who's that guy for you this week? Maybe sub 5-6% that you think is gonna cash. We'll start with Chad.
Okay, in the 7K range, the cash money is potentially my guy, Patrick Reed here. Always play Patrick Reed, especially at the Masters. Hello. Patrick Reed is one of 4 human beings have to have a top 10 in both the November and April Masters. So Patrick Reed at 7,400. There's another name at 7,400 that for some reason doesn't get any love, and it's my guy, Billy Horschel. Porschel has just come off of a second at API. He was 16th at Honda. Yes, okay, those are Florida Swing events. We know that. But at the Phoenix Open, he was 11th. Before that, at Farmers, he was doing well. Listen, okay, he's got a caddy going for him. We're talking about Scottie Scheffler's caddy and whatever else. We got Mark Fulcher. Dude used to be on the bag for Justin Rose, and he's been helping my guy Billy stay a little bit more calm out there. I know it's irritating to click Billy Horschel, but that is why he's the leverage play. Could we go with Billy Ho?
Yeah, what do you think, Rob?
Yeah, I cannot argue with Billy Ho, especially he's having an amazing year. And there's no like data to back it up, but whenever there's like good energy with the golfer where he's holing 30 feet putts and chipping in like he has, especially earlier this year, he's got something cooking. And I think there's that momentum carries over. I kind of live and die a lot of the weeks in the 6K range, in the sicko range. And I got 2. My favorite is actually Stuart Sink, tied 12th here last year. But over the last 24, he ranks 14th in driving distance. Coming in kind of okay at the Valspar, he gained 5.1 on approach, 4 tee to green. I know he's trying to go back to Harbor Town and kind of repeat, but hey, at 6,400, if you can get another top 20 when the other 5 guys in your lineup can, maybe peak, that could help you out if you're doing a stars and scrub approach. The other guy, real quick, is just Eric Van Rooyen, fast Bermuda guy. Greens kind of big on him. He's good around the greens and some long irons. BK, what about you?
I really like Mark Leishman as a play at a $7,300 this week. I'm a little bit surprised he's not getting a little bit more buzz. I don't project him to have a lot of ownership with a lot of other 7K guys being very popular, like Corey Connors, Matt Fitzpatrick, Russell Henley. And, I think Mark Leishman, he has wonderful history at the Masters. And he had a top 10 finish here last year, 13th. The year before, and then he has another 9th place finish. And I think that maybe a little bit of a concern with him would be that he's not coming in great form. He missed his last 2 cuts before he top 10 at the Masters last year. So I think with a lot of flashy and popular names in the 7K range, I really like Mark Leishman. He'll be in a lot of lineups for me, and he's someone I think that can, be around, that 8 to 10% ownership and have a high finish for you.
So one thing I noticed when I was looking back at some of the Millimaker lineups at the Masters, and one thing I noticed was they were a lot more chalky than I expected. And talking to a couple people, they echoed it. They were like, yeah, chalk actually, you'd be surprised how much, for whatever reason, chalk tends to hit more at the Masters. So I want to ask you guys, is there any guy for you? We'll start with Chad again, where you're just in. You don't care what the ownership is. You're playing him no matter what.
Brooks Koepka. Hello, it's Mr. Major, Mr. Brooks Koepka. He knows he wants a green jacket, so we're going all in on Brooks. This is a pro Brooks podcast. We've been preaching Brooks for months and years on the preferred lines. Just got Luke sweated out, Luke Walker talking about Brooks. Of course you got to use Brooks. The price is wrong. We know that. I mean, if the price is 10-4, it's a different story, but we're looking in the mid-9s. Let's go, Brooksy boy. That's who's mine. All in.
Rob?
Yeah, and like maybe the toot that same horn, like ditto, big on Brooks. Just seems to be trending in the right direction. We say that a lot. For me, it's JT. Again, another very popular play. I'm not going to speak too much about it because you'll hear his name all over the place, but I do think there's something to the kind of what BK alluded to, that hey, he's attached to Tiger at the hip right now. And I know Tiger's really famed for, kind of keeping cards close to his vest when he's playing. But Rahm in his press conference, I think there's a little truth to that there's a little bit more information given to JT than maybe these other players. Will that get him over the hump? Who knows? But it's hard to find a better ball striker than JT right now.
Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to eat the chalk with Willie Z. Absolutely, 100%. I don't care what his ownership is. I think he's due for another high finish at the Masters. Look, Will Zalatoris is one of the most talented ball strikers on tour, and Augusta National, for whatever reason, is a place that he putted well at in his only appearance here. So, I think you mix that in with the fact that he's actually made some changes to his putter that were shown at the match play. He was drilling these 12-footers, these really pressure-filled putts. And, Andy's talked about a lot that, these long irons are going to be more important this week. Driving distance going to be more important this week. Will Zalatoris is very long off the tee. He's very good with this long irons. It was on full display at Torrey Pines. So I will, no matter what ownership Will Zalatoris is at, he'll be in every lineup for me.
So guys, we're about, let's call it like 36 hours from the start of the Masters. One of the things that I've noticed in a lot of these big events lately, the Players, Kiowa Island, the Open Championship, is there seems to be a distinct advantage to waiting a little bit and playing sort of a weather bias or a stack on players with maybe a late tee time and an early on the second day. Any of you guys see anything that would indicate that could be a good situation this week?
That's a Rob question, I think.
I was just going to say, no. If you're really getting nitpicky, that Friday, obviously, I think everybody knows it's going to blow the hardest. But late Friday afternoon, like as you approach 7 o'clock, again, it's probably all going to change. There might be a little easier wind, we'll call it, like Friday afternoon, but it's really nothing that's going to adapt me. And so I'm sorry I'm not being a team player and adding any insights. So hopefully BK can save me here.
I think it's a little bit tough. I think you look at the tee times and it's just like they put every single elite player late Thursday except for JT.
Tiger.
And Tiger, of course. I mean that. But they just group after group Thursday afternoon is just absolutely stacked. And then JT is kind of the odd man out. And I think there's a lot of reasons for him that, he's obviously going to play well. But I think in that situation, you just have to hope that he goes low enough on Thursday in the favorable conditions and can kind of tread water on Friday in a little bit of more difficult conditions. But I think it's tough with the weather because at the Players, there's not going to be any delays this week, I don't believe, but it's hard to judge when they're going to delay and how long they're going to. So that just messes everything up. So it's very tough. But all the elite guys seem to be playing Thursday afternoon.
Okay, final question, guys. I want to go around the horn here one more time and ask you, and also plug all your stuff before you guys get out of here. I know you guys are all busy men this week. But one guy, and I've already talked to Brian a little bit about this, one guy that you have 0% of that is absolutely not winning. No chance this guy wins. No chance this guy plays well. Let's start with Chad.
Oh, shit. Well, there's easy outs on this answer. You could take Hideki, you could take Bryson, possibly. You could use that as a reason to not. That's weak. That's weak, and I'm not doing that. I will tell you right now. Oh God, Scottie Scheffler as the TPG, the top price guy, he will not win. I'm going to say Scottie Scheffler potentially doesn't even make it into the top 10. We're going to have an overpriced Scottie Scheffler, and that's my prediction. No Scottie for me.
Rob?
Yeah, I might go a little different route just with there's a few guys that I think, maybe will underperform on their salary and ownership. But just from a hard look at ownership and especially at top of the board, can he win? Obviously, he's played so well here. But Cam Smith for me is, if you got him at a good number, I would love an outright on him. I didn't. But at 25% owned, regardless of his form and ownership, it's just not within me to play a guy at one of his highest salaries he's ever been in a major. And then one of the highest salaries he's kind of been at 25% and then almost at 10K. Like any investment, it's hard to make a profit when you're buying someone at their high. And so we're talking about leverage. The leverage opportunity that you can get if you fade Cam Smith, to me, is just too lucrative. There's too much upside. Can I get burned and he could be, first round leader by 3 strokes Thursday? Yeah, sure. But I'm willing to die on that hill just with the opportunity to take on some of that possible leverage if he just happens to not play well. I don't feel good about it and it's scary, but might just not work for me. So I'm going to hope with everything I can that Cam Smith doesn't win this week.
BK?
Yeah, I honestly agree with Rob. I do not think Cam Smith will win. I think that it would just be like he's not going to win. I'm with you there with Rob, but I said it before, and I agree. This is kind of a cheap answer. It's not as cheap as Chad's answer per se, but I will say unequivocally, Rory will not win. He would have done it by now. I think that is the reason I'm going with. Rory would have won the Masters by now. He's too in his own head. Doesn't matter that Tiger's not going to be there. It doesn't matter that the spotlight's on him. Rory, although this course should be perfect for him, I do not believe that Rory will win the Masters, and we will get a storybook career Grand Slam for Rory this week.
Great stuff, guys. It felt like just 5 boys in all 4 corners of the United States just talking golf. So I greatly appreciate all you guys stepping on. At Adina Real Chi on Twitter. Rob is DFS RC Guild, at Brian Kirshner as well. Make sure to give them a follow on Twitter. Check out all of their content. They all do fantastic work. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
Thanks.
Have
guys.
a good night. I appreciate what you guys do. Have a good
night.
All right. That was
Cool.
fun, man.
That was a blast. Yeah.
Just getting the boys together.